Thank you for coming. I must apologize that I changed the room for this lecture to the student who takes, what was the name? Behavior signal processing. As last year, I have grouped it up, 2 lectures in this time slot. This is the joint lecture for leading programs, real-world data circulation systems first, and also the Graduate School of Informatics, no, Information Science, the behavior signal processing. And actually, this slot will be used by 2 lecturers, I and Professor Kawaguchi, who is in engineering school. So the student who takes my course can listen to valuable 2 lectures. One is not so valuable, but the Kaguchi-sensei's lecture definitely will be a very exciting one. So anyway, let me start. Please forgive me to start very, very fundamental idea because each of you may not familiar with the other aspect of this lecture. Okay. First of all, student in my class in graduate school of informatics or information science is not so familiar with the idea of real-world data circulation. That is the main idea and theme for our leading program. Okay. So real-world circulation, what we understand by means of the word or wording is like this. We pretty much appreciate that we can form a loop of information or data flow between virtual world and real world, and which can be realized through 3 basic concepts. One is the acquisition from data or information from real world, and analysis of the acquired data. And then you can implement somehow the result of analysis onto the real world. So that is a very fundamental idea of real world data circulation. Why it is important? Because in many cases we heavily rely on the virtual world now in our world. We can use various mathematical technologies for designing or predicting the very, very complicated things like social activities of human being, or even very, very complex machine controlled in a very sophisticated way. For example, autonomous driving. That is one of the target of this lecture today. So utilizing such fantastic technologies in the real world, because real world doesn't work as you expect. Real world is highly stochastic, and real world is full of the things that you don't know, like your emotion or your preference to the things. So to connect the virtual world and the real world and to realize the very good future of the society based on the virtual knowledges, we need make a very fluent information flow based on these acquisition, analysis, implementation, and then again acquisition, analysis, and implementation. This is a loop. This is a loop which continue forever. And every one single circulation will make you a little bit better result by means of, say, machine learning or things like that. So the very important thing that is emphasized in the real-world data circulation program is to know the value, the real value of the data. You can collect as much data as possible from the real world by IT or IoT, for example, but it is very, very difficult to know the value of the data. For instance, the value is different across people, among people. we and you do not always share the same value. For example, my value maybe is not so much on money side, but my lifetime is so much limited than you. So for me, time is much more valuable. But for you, maybe other things would be very important. So the value is very important. This is a crucial idea. And I will mention a little bit about this in the next slide. That is for the introduction of the or of a different course than the real-world data circulation program. So if you can measure or acquire these two informations, which is say sensor signals and the values, then you can find somehow those relationship between the real-world data and also real-world value. And it is, of course, not easy to find the function f, which connect the data and value. That is not always easy. But nowadays, because we have learned a lot from the statistics and machine learning and maybe deep learning, those data-oriented knowledge representation enables us to utilize the direct transformation from data to value. So that is a very good news to our society in our century. Okay? And once we can build sort of mathematical representation of the connection between real-world data and also real-world value, then we can somehow maximize the value by changing the data and behavior of systems, like, for instance, vehicle behavior. And once you can measure how the change of the behavior of the vehicle is good or bad for the users associated with the real data, then you can use that data for another circulation of the learning and optimization. That makes you finally very nice and fitted and, how do I say, understandable to you kind of things. So this is the basic idea of real-world data circulations. And the students, rather than you, who take behavior signal processing, real-world data circulation student, are every day studying about like that in the various different fields, like economy or medical science or life science or things like that. So this is the heart of the real-world data circulation. And this is the part of the class or course of lectures of introducing such values and systems by studies of the professors. Okay, this is the good thing of real-world data circulation, and this is a part of this class. And to the student in real-world data circulation programs, I like to introduce my class in the Graduate School of Informatics. A very, very short, one slide. We are discussing about the human behavior, okay, based on the signal processing. So the title of this lecture course actually is Human Behavior Signal Processing or Human Behavior Information Processing. Okay, so how does it mean? Human behavior represents the human itself. That is the main concept, okay? So I don't know how many of you have seen this slide, but I recently use this slide very often. So we have a very famous saying that, so by the way, I guess you all know about Nobunaga, Hideyoshi, and Ieyasu. If you have no idea with them, then I'm sorry, but it's okay. So those three, heroes of the historic, stories are characterized by a very short poem, Senryu, 泣かぬなら泣かしてみせよう、泣かすなら殺してしまえ、I will kill you. This is a story about kakko, or I don't know what is the name of the bird, but these three senryus, 泣かぬなら殺してしまえホトトギス、泣かぬなら泣かせてみせよホトトギス by Hideyoshi, and 泣かぬなら泣くまで待とうホトトギス by Ieyasu. And those three poems represent their personality very, very well in a concise manner. So I can translate that poem into a system block diagram. That is this. So three boxes represent the human characteristics or personality of these three individuals, right? And they share the input, okay? Because I represent those people as a system which takes input as a signal and which output the signal. So input-output relation is the system characteristics, and system characteristics can be, characterize each individual personality. So even they share a same input, they output different signals, okay? One is kill you, one is making you singing, and one is wait until you sing things like that. So this input and output relation can represent the human characteristics. And of course, those signals can be measured. That can be like a natural language, can be image or video footage, which can you see or hear, or sounds, whatever the sensation to the human. That can be almost able to be measured by current technologies. So how do you behave against those same context is a very interesting way to understand the human being. So this is a very big background of this lecture. And we're going to introduce a lot of modalities of signals like music, natural language, and speech, and haptics or gestures. We have been studying these different modalities of input and output relations. But the fundamental topic or interest of my lecture course is like this: human personality. Actually, I'm hosting this lecture course in the Graduate School of Information Science, but I myself talk very short, like this session. And all other lectures are given by famous professors from Tokyo University or Institute of Informatics. So we invite a lot of professors outside the university, and we have, organizing this lecture course, I believe. So if you are interested in, unfortunately, that class is held in this particular time slot. Therefore, you cannot get that, but I hope if you have chance, I can welcome you to my class in this lecture course also. So the system is completely represented by a mathematical theory like signal processing. This discrete time signal processing or even continuous time signal processing. That is a fundamental and established discipline. Therefore, you can fully utilize these technologies. And this is not, this is actually very much related to the first figure here, real-world data circulation. So data, this context include a lot of signal modalities which affect to the human behavior, okay? So data is sort of a world to me. Okay, this is the mutual introduction of 2 lecture series. So I hope you have had a brief idea of what the other students are studying, okay? So today's topic is the vehicle technology, particularly the artificial intelligence for the vehicle control. Because this is very hot topic, and I don't know, we invite Kato sensei as a lecturer in this class or not, do we? Okay, so he's gonna talk more, how do I say, attractively to you about the future of the autonomous driving. Have he already? Yeah. Okay, so you may have a lot of things, studied about a lot of things about driving and driving AI, artificial intelligence. But even though I would like to introduce my idea, that might be slightly different from his perspective, maybe. So this is a very symbolic video which shows that how deep learning can drive a vehicle or drive a passenger car. This is not connected to internet. Sorry, just wait. I have not connected to the. So do someone can summarize the talk of Kato Sensei? How about Naren? Can you briefly talk about his presentation? Oh, but whatever it is, what did he talk?
He briefly talked how he can complete automated car in 6 months, from the scratch to complete a fully automated car in 6 months.
Oh, okay. So how did you feel?
I think their team is really very great and creative and very efficient. They quickly build a strong team, and every team member have his own objective, and really work together really efficient.
So how did you guess why he did?
I think the original thought is how to say, it have a big business potential. So we have a very large fund to support that, and also the big technical support. The idea is to have a business potential, so we can collect the resources in a short time.
Well, but if you're talking about the resources for the development, so Toyota or Nissan, they have a huge amount of money. So in terms of the money funding for development, that doesn't sense to me. I don't know, but anyway, So this is a very famous video. That's distributed by NVIDIA, which is a GPU company, recently, very, very powerful in industry. And they try to build an autonomous vehicle based on the neural network, or in other words, convolutional neural network. I'm gonna play, sorry.
Holy cow. Whoa.
There's no sound. Seems to me. Yeah, seems it doesn't sound. Sorry, but after training, based on the data that you saw in the video, finally this vehicle can be controlled by a simple, not simple maybe, deep learning neural network. And there are a lot of amazing things that the conventional rule-based description cannot do. For example, most of the vehicle, currently autonomous vehicle, uses a white line for the lane boundary as a very relevant cue for controlling vehicle. Therefore, the off-road, like the final clip of the video, cannot be correctly dealt by the conventional technology. But because they train their system based on such real-world data, then they could build very robust control mechanisms for the autonomous vehicle. So currently, autonomous vehicles are based on the descriptive knowledge. People program for the special cases, for the controlling, for the detecting. Of course, the object detection part is done by neural network, because that does very good job for object recognition based on the image data. But other part are hardly coded by computer program. It is somehow very, very sophisticated, And in some sense, probability-based theory are used for controlling, but still it is not learning-based. So we need more and more data circulation for building up such technology. So this is current status of that AI which can drive. It is far from realistic, but it's getting very, very knowledgeable very quickly. So that is the reality. Okay. So the next slide, again, I map the real-world data circulation onto the development of such a AI for driving. So data acquisition is now easy. We can settle a lot of sensor modality or sensing devices onto the vehicle, like you can see in the building. Not in the building, but by the building of the IB. And also the finding the very, very complex rule, again, between real-world data and human preference or value. Also be able to solved by stochastic learning. This figure, typically or symbolically represent such a training data, a training process, and I will look back this part again in this main part, in the main lecture. Sorry. And so even the autonomous driving technology or its artificial intelligence knowledge can be a part of the target of the real-world data circulation. And actually, that is a very, very easy application for the real-world data circulation because the sensing is easy, and also, sensing is actually, it is very easy. We can measure the human behavior and also vehicle behavior and internal environment using camera or biological sensors or physiological sensors. That is not so difficult like a smartphone kind of things. Vehicle is very big and they have electric power. Therefore, it can be somehow handy to handle that. And the data volume can be very large. They can have terabytes of memory, and they can be connected to the very fast internet. And therefore, it is very good target for applying the real-world data circulation. And in different perspective, we can also measure the value from the real-world data circulation. This, their argument, of course, what is the value of driving? Because for some people, driving itself could be fun, and they like to drive. And for some people, safety is the most crucial, interest. And the other guy like to, how do I say, do job or work, mailing, chatting, texting, while driving, things like that. So what they can, they are hoping to do with autonomous driving a little bit diverse. But essential value may be economy and also safety. And those kind of things are not so difficult to measure. Because, it's because a huge number of cars on the road. Therefore, the social metrics can be somehow easy to retrieved from those running vehicles. And so, so I think, as a part of the behavior signal processing, I like to focus on this part first, okay? How can we find the very, very complex relation with the sensor data and value? How can we associate them? It is not a simple function like, say, log linear regression and things like that. That is too simple to describe human behavior. Okay, so in order to do this kind of research, we need definitely research corpus, and that is not so. The research corpus is, in many cases, slightly different from the real-world data. Real-world data is very valuable, of course, but it not always easy to use them for the research purposes directly. We need to sometimes purify in data for particular sakes of the research. So in our case, we have built a vehicle for measuring the data, and use this vehicle for the experiment. But nowadays, they provide a very cheap setup of this kind of things, and we also the data based on the experimental setup, and and we have measured a lot of signals. Actually, later on, we found that some sensor modalities are not so efficient for research purposes. But for the first stage of research, what we could do was just collecting a lot of data. And as you see, an image still not in high resolution in that time, because that is 10 years ago. Because at that time, 10 years or more, we started 2000 or 1999. At that time, hard disk is very unstable under the moving conditions. We need to supply a lot of energy, electricity to those equipment, and vibration sometimes kill the hard disks. But the SSD, silicon memory, is very, very expensive at that time. So we had a lot of challenges for research, but we did kind of things here, and we collected more than 800 drivers data. That was the world's biggest research corpus at the moment. Currently, it is not, but So doing such kind of things is very important for the human behavior research. Okay, then how can we find F that associate the real world data with total value? That is not easy at all, okay? So we have tried a lot of different topics in order to find good F for the particular values. But because time is limited, in this case, I just like to mention about the prediction of the driving based on the collected data only. So the driving behavior prediction is a fundamental idea of driving AI, which means that if you feed the external conditions of the context of the driving, you can generate the driving profile of the particular driver. That is the task. That is the topic of this research. And of course, if you can find a good function or even an equation like this, when you're given a static variable, then its dynamics can be calculated. This is a simple structure of differential equation, okay, or motion equation in general, in some cases. And by giving this kind of equation, you can generate arbitrary behavior of the dynamic system. So differential equation is quite useful for analyzing the dynamics phenomenon. But the F here is not easy to find, not easy to model. If it is a simple kinematic systems like perpendicular motions or steady speed motion, free fall, those kind of things can be easily analyzed based on the kinematic theories. But in this case, this is not a physics, right? This is not a kinematics, right? This is the human behavior. Therefore, there is no solid idea how human being is controlled by what kind of principle. So what we can do best is collect the data, a lot of data. Then we can find at least how each of two variables associated in terms of data distribution, right? So this is this depicts the idea of distribution. So distribution not always flat. If you see the joint distribution of x and x dot, or stochastic information, static information and dynamic information, then you can find the relationship between two variables in terms of the frequency of the distribution, or in terms of the density of data, right? For example, if the density of the data distribution is like this, okay, it's a superposition of three simple Gaussian distribution, which tells us a lot of things. For example, very, very typical value of the x dot at the given value x is maybe like this. Or in this case, maybe like this. So this is that, okay? And also, you can see that the data, like here, are hardly observed because it has not been observed at all in the training data. So these associations of two variables gives you a good hint or suggestion of the behavior of the unseen or unknown situation by generalizing this distribution based on fitting the data distribution function PDF. For instance, if the real data is like this, maybe you can find a lot of data, if you observe a huge number of data, things like this. Some data behaves like very, like outlier of the distribution, but main part of the distribution can be described by these three mountains. Okay? So this fitting PDF is one of the central issues of machine learning, as you know. So what machine learning can do is find a good approximation in terms of data distribution for this complex system. And how do you use that complex system is upon you, upon me. We need to use such mathematical representation as a source of the knowledge. Source of the knowledge of the complex things. So in spite of finding the very funny function f, but we can try to find the data distribution and utilize it as various purposes. In this case, I can mention that this knowledge can be used for predicting the future behavior of driver. This is a very simple extension of the differential equation. So, so the basic idea is that the difference between two time sequence, or two samples in time sequence, can be regarded as a dynamic characteristics x dot. So sometimes x dot is approximated by xn minus xn minus 1 in discrete case, or in the continuous case, x t plus delta t minus xt over delta t. This can be sometimes used as the dynamic or time derivative of the particular time sequence. So it is easy to observe the two consecutive data samples and how do they jointly distribute in the measurement domain, like this. So this function could be very easy to calculate and fit by the, say, Gaussian mixture combination. So based on this, we can somehow predict the next sample next sample, most probable next sample, and then you can control the vehicle or generate the driving maneuver behavior for the particular value that you expected, and that is given that point like this. So this is the driver prediction idea based on the data distribution. So this is the result of that idea. We implemented in car following, simple car following case. In that experiment, the two subjects tried to follow the foregoing vehicle, and foregoing vehicle, driving pattern are same, is same. So they do try to follow the same vehicle on a simulator setup. And one student actually is a subject, try to keep the same distance to the foregoing vehicle. In order to do so, he used a very frequent pedal operation. On the other hand, one student does not much care about the change of the intervehicular distance. Therefore, he's a little bit lazy comparing to the driver B. Therefore, his driving pattern is a little bit sparse or smooth. And these characteristics can be represented by this data plane. And by using this maximum likelihood estimation for the next sample, it can surely follow the dynamic system in a very good precision of accuracy. So the blue line is the predicted value against to the red line. So you can see that the experiment shows that statistical data distribution and its application for the next sample prediction works pretty well. And this can be easily extended to more complex situation like lane changing. So in the lane changing scenario, we need to switch the driving state. For instance, in the first stage, they prepare for lane changing, and the second stage, they actually shift move to the next lane. And then the driver need to adjust their speed for the next lane's traffic flow. So those three mode or states has naturally different data distribution. Therefore, we can train Markov model. Each of the state have different data distribution. And in this particular case, the Markov model is a special Markov model, hidden Markov model. In that model, we cannot observe the state sequence itself from the observation, but we can guess the data transitional property of the from the data. So finally, we could train the data distribution for each of three states, like this. We have three states, and then by sampling this sequence of the states by throwing a dice and generate as many possible but probable vehicle trajectory as possible, like this. Of course, simple sampling gives you a very, unstable vehicle trajectory. This cannot be achieved by physical system. But once you feed this into the low pass filter or things like that, then we can smooth out this fluctuation, and finally we can get the vehicle trajectory like this, as many as possible. In this case, we have generated like thousands of possible trajectories which obeys on the data distribution given by a hidden Markov model. And finally, we can test those distribution, those trajectories against to the current particular driving situation, which is the location or relative location to the neighboring vehicles. Okay. And that is can be shown like this. We can also design a function which enumerate the risk level of each individual driver's feeling as a counter map like this, and you can find the most appropriate trajectory out of thousands of sampled trajectories. That is another scenario. And we have also confirmed the correctness of this method. And the good thing of this method is that once you can measure, or you could measure the lane change behavior, you can adjust the way that the particular driver prefers. So lane changing is one of the typical behavior that preference of each drivers are diverse very much. So we can adjust the autonomous driving system so that the driving behavior is quite comfortable for the particular driver based on this kind of method. So this is another good example of how can we find the effects. Effects is the association of the observed data and also the value of the behavior based on the stochastic modeling. Okay, so machine learning is fantastic. We can get a huge benefit from these kind of technologies, and I believe that this is worth for study and worth for training, worth for studying and learning. Okay. And finally, I thought that one of my students is here, and he could, talk rather than for me about this issue, topic. But I'm sorry I could not see him. So I myself will introduce current driving AI, artificial intelligence status of our research group. So Seiya-kun, I miss him. But again, data circulation, okay? It's a very simple data circulation for building the driving AI. By the way, the word end-to-end is becoming very popular and common in various research fields. End-to-end means that without converting the real-world signal into the future, you feed the real-world signal directly to the deep learning or deep neural network. And also, you do not expect the output of the neural network as a kind of a descriptive symbolic output, but also output a continuous controlled value that you expected to apply the neural network technology. For instance, in this case, end-to-end driving AI means just showing the speed and the frontal video, and then that neural network going to generate the driving maneuver, like steering wheel angles and also the gas pedal operation. So just complicated things and complicated things, mapping. But still, it is believed that this kind of setup can perform very well. One of the evidence of such an end-to-end learning is realistic, is also from my field, speech. And speech signal processing, mostly based on the spectral analysis of the voice signal in a very short time frame. And spectral representation of speech in a short time frame would be used as a speech input to the machine speech recognition system for a long time, more than 40 years. But they found that such future value or extracting the future value is not so much important for the neural network learning. Neural network can even acquire such conversion from the real data signal into the future value by itself. So end-to-end becomes a very important paradigm for researchers for fully utilizing the deep learning kind of things. So I don't know. I'm not so familiar with deep learning a lot, and I'm not myself doing experiments, so I cannot much to say. I don't have much to say, but I believe you better to abandon all conventional knowledge or way of thinking. If you like to utilize a very new paradigm, you're going to start with blank, and don't think that what you are doing is stupid. Even your supervisor says so. Okay, so you are the force for pioneering the very, very new frontier, right? I myself thinks like the way that I was, the way that I used I was student for 20 years or young researchers. But now the paradigm is completely changing. Therefore, your idea is much more important and valuable than for the older guys like me. So please be ambitious and try new things. And don't think that what you are thinking is stupid, even if your supervisor says something like that. Okay, so that is my comment. Okay, but anyway, in this case, very simple data circulation. That is very important to keep you in your mind. Vehicle and crowd and deep learning. Okay, so this is very easy to circulate, to realize nowadays. And so what he did, Seiya-kun did, is quite clever. Not simply feed a set of data that is image as an input and steering wheel angle, that is the output, but not learn such one-to-one, driving AI or driving data directly. But he thinks that because from the natural data, it is not easy to find external or abnormal situation. But important thing is how do they behave under the abnormal or dangerous situation, right? So he tried to generate the data from the usual driving, using the usual driving, how the system should behave in the case that the vehicle was out of range. Okay, so the important thing is how do you adjust the location in lane when the vehicle is out of range. But what you can measure or what you can acquire easily is the driving behavior when the vehicle is inside the correct lane. So if you collect huge amount of data for such a very normal situation, you cannot acquire the knowledge how you should behave when your vehicle is out of the range. So what he thought was he definitely need to learn such data, and such data is not be naturally acquired. Therefore, he tried to generate such data based on the different location camera. Okay, so if you put the camera here, then you see the right lane. If you put the camera like there, then you're going to see the situation that you are out of range in the right time. So he can use that data for learning the correct vehicle behavior. So I hope his video shows idea of what he's doing. So this is This is a video while he's training the small vehicle. This is not a commercial vehicle like kind of things. Oops. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm very bad at operating the PowerPoint. Okay. So he's now, programmed that unmanned vehicle to go straight on the green road. Green. That's like. Green belt, yeah. And finally, he trained that system. And let's see what happened based on that training. For the simple replication of the straight lane driving, it can replicate the same thing because it is it is what actually the vehicle trained. And interesting thing of generalization is that based on that simple training, it can also make a right turn because he has imposed some data to avoid the to being in the outside of the lane. Therefore, the neural network can naturally learn where is the boundary and also what should the vehicle do when it is out of the lane in the correct position. So this is a good example of the generalization of the neural network training. And also the left turning path also be correctly dropped. So this is very interesting experiment. Of course, this is not a real car, and the vehicle is like slowly walking or things like that. But I think this is my first experience to see the neural network can control the vehicle based on the purely training scenario. And we got another interesting example. Even the boundary of the path is not so clear, like the grass is here. Then the vehicle try to make avoid to going into that area. So this is another interesting generalization. So yeah, of course, this is a very simple examples, but I hope this research will becomes a realistic scenario, and we are actually planning to do this experiment based on the real vehicle in the test bed in Tsukuba this autumn. So Miss Seiya-kun is not here, but he's an exciting guy, and he's doing this experiment. So yes, I think that this is the final slide. So again, thank you very much for coming, and I see Kaguya sensei is already here. So we're going to start from 11:30. 11:20. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I use your times, but okay. So next one is Kaguya sensei. So thank you very much.